The air in the first-class lounge at JFK was thick with entitlement, but Carolyn Harding felt she owned it all. When she saw the Vance family heading for the priority boarding lane, she saw a problem. They were black, they were relaxed, and they were, in her eyes, not supposed to be up front. She decided to fix it. She had no idea she was about to verbally assault a man who didn't just own a private jet, but was flying commercial today to finalize a deal that could, with a single phone call, end her entire world. This is the story of a brutal reckoning at 30,000 feet. The Ethelredge Air First Class Lounge at JFK Terminal 4 was a hushed sanctuary of muted greys, brushed brass, and the discreet clinking of heavy glassware. It was an ecosystem built on the illusion of privacy, where wealth was measured not in volume, but in silence. Julian Vance, 52, did not look like the most dangerous man in the room. He looked like a college professor. He wore a simple, dark grey cashmere sweater, charcoal trousers, and a Patek Philippe watch that was so understated it was often mistaken for a Timex. He was reading a physical, hardcover book on Byzantine history. Opposite him sat his wife, Aidan, her focus on a tablet, reviewing architectural plans for the new pediatric wing her foundation was funding. Their 7-year-old son, Leo, was quietly engrossed in a complex-looking Lego set on a small table, his headphones on, his world focused on tiny plastic bricks. They were a portrait of quiet, domestic calm. This calm was precisely what irritated Carolyn Harding. Carolyn, 48, was the opposite of quiet. She wore a sharply tailored, look-at-me, red blazer, and her blonde hair was sprayed into a helmet of submission. She had been pacing the lounge for 20 minutes, speaking into her phone loud enough for everyone to hear her side of a conversation about margins, Robert's bonus, and the incompetent board at her husband's bank. She hung up with a theatrical sigh and scanned the room, her eyes immediately landing on the Vances. She had clocked them when they came in. She had clocked their simple clothes. She had clocked the gate agent's deferential bow as he welcomed them, and she had clocked their race. In Carolyn's meticulously curated world, these things did not add up. First class, especially the Ethelredge First Class, was her territory. It was the C-suite, the old money, the people who belonged. The Vances, in her assessment, did not. She watched as Aidan signaled to Leo, who obediently began packing his Legos. Julian closed his book, marking his page. They were gathering their things. Carolyn felt a small, bitter spike of satisfaction. They were probably being moved. Perhaps they were in the lounge by mistake. A flight attendant's guest pass, maybe. She pulled out her compact, checking her lipstick, her mind already on the champagne she would demand the moment she sat in seat 2A. Her husband, Robert Harding, a senior vice president at Crestview Bank, was counting on this trip. He was the liaison for a massive, company-making merger with a Swiss credit bank, and the final negotiations were in London. Carolyn's job was to arrive, look flawless, and host the cocktail party for the bankers' wives. Her entire social standing depended on Robert's success. The lounge speaker chimed. "We are now pleased to announce priority boarding for flight Zeudleu 8 to London Heathrow, exclusively for our first-class guests in the Sky Palace residence and our Platinum Concierge members." Carolyn snapped her bag shut. This was her. She rose, pulling her carry-on, and marched toward the private exit. She saw the Vance family rise as well. They were walking just ahead of her. Carolyn sniffed. Typical. They were probably going to try to board, get turned away, and make a scene. She sped up, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble, determined to get in front of them, to establish the proper hierarchy before they even left the room. "Excuse me," she said, not as a question, but as a command. She pushed her bag directly in front of Aidan, cutting the family off. Aidan stopped, her hand instinctively going to Leo's shoulder. Julian looked up from his phone, his expression mild, but his eyes suddenly very, very still. "You'll want to wait for general boarding," Carolyn said, not looking at them, but at the gate agent, David, who was waiting at the desk. "They'll call by zones." Julian said nothing. He simply stepped to the side, gesturing for Carolyn to proceed. She smiled, a thin, victorious smirk. "See?" she thought. "They know their place." She swept past them, presented her ticket to David, and with a toss of her head, walked down the jet bridge. She didn't look back. Julian, Aidan, and Leo waited. "Mr. Vance?" David said, his voice laced with apology. "We are so sorry for that. The Sky Palace is ready for you. Please, proceed at your leisure." Julian nodded, gave David a small, appreciative smile, and took his son's hand. "All right, champ. Let's go see the big plane." They walked down the same jet bridge, their footsteps silent, the real storm still gathering. The jet bridge was divided. A small, curtained-off lane on the left was marked Residence. The main lane for the rest of first class was on the right. Carolyn, in her haste, had gone right. The Vances were directed by a flight attendant at the junction to go left. When Carolyn reached the aircraft door, she was greeted by the chief purser, Sarah, a woman with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Welcome aboard, Mrs. Harding. Seat 2A to your right." "Is the champagne poured?" Carolyn asked, brushing past her. "It will be right with you, ma'am." Carolyn settled into her pod, a spacious, well-appointed seat. But not the residence. The residence was Ethelred Eyre's crown jewel, a private 3-room suite with a living area, a separate bedroom, and a private bathroom with a shower. It was, essentially, a flying apartment, and it cost more than a new car. As Carolyn was stuffing her bag into the overhead, she heard the family arrive. She paused, peering out. She watched as Julian, Aidan, and Leo were not directed to the pods. They were met by 2 flight attendants and Marcus Thorne, the airline's head of onboard experience, who had apparently materialized just for them. "Mr. Vance, welcome," Marcus said, his voice radiating a warmth Carolyn hadn't received. "We have the Dom Perignon 08, chilling for you and Mrs. Vance, and we sourced the specific sparkling apple juice you mentioned Leo enjoys. Your private butler, Antoine, is waiting inside." Carolyn's hands froze on her bag. "Butler?" She watched, her blood pressure rising, as the family was personally escorted past the first-class cabin and to a discreet, polished mahogany door at the very front of the plane. The door was opened, and they disappeared inside. Carolyn slammed her overhead bin shut. The thud was so loud that the man in 1A, Arthur Finch, looked up from his Financial Times with a frown. She flagged down Sarah, the purser. Excuse me." Sarah glided over. "Yes, Mrs. Harding." "There has been a serious mistake," Carolyn hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You've put an economy family in the residence." Sarah's professional smile didn't waver, but her eyes went cold. "I can assure you, ma'am, there is no mistake. The Vance family are our guests in the Sky Palace." "Guests? Did they win a competition? Did you give it to them as some sort of outreach program?" Arthur Finch in 1A lowered his newspaper. He was listening. "Mrs. Harding," Sarah said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Mr. Vance is one of our most valued clients. He is a concierge key Black Diamond member. That suite is, in fact, his." "His? What does that mean, his?" "It means Mr. Vance's company buys out the residence on this route 3 times a week, whether he flies in it or not. He is our most valued client. Now, may I get you that champagne?" Carolyn was speechless. The words, "Black Diamond," and "buys it out," echoed in her head. It didn't make sense. The man was wearing a sweater. She slumped back into her seat, defeated and confused, but her confusion quickly curdled into resentment. She was sure something was wrong. They had gamed the system. They had to have. People like her, people whose husbands were pillars of the financial community, were the ones who should be in that suite. The plane finished boarding. The doors closed. The safety video played. But Carolyn wasn't watching. She was stewing. She was plotting. And she was, most dangerously, convinced of her own righteousness. The plane reached cruising altitude. The fasten seatbelt sign pinged off. Almost immediately, the curtain to the residence suite swished open, and little Leo Vance emerged, holding his Lego creation, a spaceship. He was clearly looking for a flight attendant, a small, hopeful look on his face. He saw Sarah near the galley and took a few steps toward her. Carolyn saw her chance. As Leo passed her pod, column 2, row A, she stuck her foot out. It wasn't an overt trip, but it was a deliberate, obstructive barrier. Leo, not looking, stumbled over her designer heel and fell, his Lego spaceship shattering across the aisle. Leo didn't cry. He just gasped, his eyes wide with shock and embarrassment. "Oh, for heaven's sake!" Carolyn snapped, as if she were the victim. "Watch where you're going. You can't just run around up here. This isn't a playground." Before Leo could even react, Aidan Vance was there. She had emerged from the suite right behind her son. She hadn't seen the foot, but she saw the fall. She saw the shattered Lego, and she saw the cold, satisfied look on Carolyn's face. Aidan's presence was magnetic. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. "Leo, are you all right?" she asked, her voice like warm honey. She helped him up, brushing him off, ignoring the plastic pieces for a moment. I think so," Leo whispered, his lip trembling. Aidan then turned her attention to Carolyn. The temperature in the cabin dropped 10 degrees. "Did you speak to my son?" Aidan asked. "I was just telling him to be careful," Carolyn said, defensive. "He tripped. He shouldn't be wandering." "He was walking to the galley," Aidan said, her voice perfectly level. "And you seem to have had your foot in the aisle." "I was just stretching my leg," Carolyn retorted, her voice rising. "It's not my fault if he's clumsy." At this point, Arthur Finch in 1A spoke. "That's not what happened." His voice was a gravelly baritone. Carolyn froze. "I was watching," Arthur said, not even looking at Carolyn, but at Aidan. "She put her foot out, deliberately. Then she berated your son for her own malice." Carolyn's face went from pale to beet red. "How dare you? I did no such thing. You're colluding with them." "Colluding?" Arthur let out a short, sharp laugh that held no humor. "Mum, I have no idea who these people are. I just know what I saw. You tripped a child and then blamed him for it. It was despicable." The entire first-class cabin was now silent, all eyes on the confrontation. "Now see what you've done!" Carolyn shrieked, turning on Aidan. "You've caused a scene. You people always cause a scene. I knew you didn't belong up here." The words, "you people," hung in the pressurized air, toxic and unmistakable. Aidan's eyes narrowed. "What did you say?" "You heard me. This is first class. This is for us. Not for whatever token program got you on this plane. That is enough." Sarah, the purser, was suddenly there, flanked by 2 other attendants. "Mrs. Harding, your language is unacceptable. I need you to return to your seat and remain quiet." "Or what?" Carolyn sneered. "You'll ground the plane? I am the wife of Robert Harding, Senior VP at Crestview Bank. We are vital to this airline's business." "Ma'am, if you do not desist, you will be in breach of federal air regulations. We will restrain you and have you arrested upon landing." The threat of "arrested" finally cut through Carolyn's tirade. She looked around, suddenly aware of the other passengers filming her on their phones. She saw Arthur Finch's disgusted stare. She saw Sarah's stony expression. She huffed, crossed her arms, and fell back into her seat. "This is ridiculous. I am being harassed. I will be filing a major complaint." "You do that, Mom," Sarah said, her voice dripping ice. Aidan, who had been silent through the tirade, simply collected her son, helped him gather the broken pieces of his toy, and stood. She looked down at Carolyn, who refused to meet her gaze. "You have a wonderful day," Aidan said, her voice void of all emotion. She and Leo disappeared back into the residence. A moment later, the curtain swished open again. It was Julian. He hadn't been there for the confrontation. He had been on a call. He walked out, his face unreadable. He did not look at Carolyn. He walked straight to seat 1A. He leaned down. "Mr. Finch? Arthur Finch?" Arthur looked up, surprised. "Yes. Julian Vance. I'm the man in the suite. I wanted to thank you for what you did for my son." Arthur nodded. "No thanks necessary. I can't abide a bully." "Neither can I," Julian said. "I believe we're both heading to the Swiss credit meeting tomorrow. I'm the other party. The buyer." Arthur Finch's eyes widened. He was the CEO of Swiss Credit, the bank being sold. He hadn't known who Orion Global was. It was a ghost company. "Mr. Vance," Arthur began. "Julian, please," Julian said, offering a hand. "I think we have a lot to discuss. But first, may I ask you a question about Crestview Bank? It appears their senior management has a judgment problem." Carolyn Harding, 2 feet away, felt the blood drain from her face. Julian Vance didn't return to the residence immediately. He stood in the galley, speaking with Marcus Thorne and Sarah. His voice was inaudible to the cabin, but his posture was all business. He was not angry. He was not emotional. He was, if anything, surgical. "I want the footage from every passenger who was recording," Julian said quietly. "I want the purser's official report, and I want a full profile on Mrs. Carolyn Harding, including her husband's position at Crestview Bank." "Sir, of course," Marcus said, scribbling notes. "We are appalled. We will have her met by authorities in London. She will be charged." Julian held up a hand. "No." Marcus paused. "Sir, no authorities. No arrest." "But Mr. Vance, she assaulted your child. She used racist—" "I am aware of what she did," Julian interrupted, his voice dropping. "An arrest is messy. It makes me a victim. I am not a victim. An arrest gives her a platform to complain, to sue, to be a martyr. I am not interested in her martyrdom. I am interested in consequences." Sarah and Marcus looked at each other, a new, dawning understanding passing between them. This was a man who operated on a different level. "Sir, what would you like us to do?" Sarah asked. "For now?" "Nothing. Treat her with cold, bare minimum professionalism. Give her no more fuel. But I want her banned from this airline. A lifetime ban. Her and her husband." "Consider it done, Mr. Vance," Marcus said. "Good." Julian nodded. "Now please, patch me through to my office. Use the high-speed satellite link. I need to speak to my general counsel." "Right away." Julian was handed a satellite phone. He returned to the privacy of the residence, closing the heavy door behind him. Aidan was reading a story to Leo, who was now safely tucked into the full-sized bed, his broken Lego forgotten. Julian sat in the living room area, took a sip of water, and punched a number. "Helena, it's Julian. I'm on the plane. Yes, it's fine. Listen, we have a change of plans regarding the Swiss credit acquisition. No, the acquisition is fine. It's the partner bank, Crestview. I'm pulling them." The voice on the other end was inaudible. "No, the diligence was fine. The character is not— I'll explain later. I want them cut out. Immediately. I don't care what the penalty clause is. Pay it. But they are out. And I want you to run full diligence on a man named Robert Harding, Senior VP at Crestview. I want to know everything. His mortgage, his car loans, his credit lines, his club memberships. I want to know who holds his paper. Yes, Helena, all of it. I suspect we do." He paused again. "Exactly. Find out where our leverage is. And then call in the notes, all of them. As of 9 a.m. London time." He hung up. He looked out the window at the endless expanse of blue sky. He was not a monster. He was a pragmatist. In his world, you did not get to be a billionaire, especially a black billionaire, by allowing vipers to live in your garden. You simply removed them. Quietly. Efficiently. Permanently. Carolyn Harding, in her mind, had attacked his son. She had insulted his wife. She had questioned his right to exist in a space he owned. She hadn't just made a scene. She had, without knowing it, declared war on a sovereign nation. And Julian Vance did not lose wars. While Julian made his call, Carolyn stewed. She had tried to get Sarah's attention for another drink, but she was pointedly ignored, served only by a junior flight attendant who slammed the mini bottle of wine on her tray without a word. The man in 1A, Arthur Finch, had his privacy screen up, but she could hear him on a call, his voice clipped and angry. Unacceptable. Yes, a total liability. The judgment is— I can't even describe it. No, he's fine. The buyer, he's impressive. It's the intermediary. Crestview. Yes, that's what I said. We're cutting them out. Call our people. We're going exclusive with Orion Global. I don't care what our contract with Crestview says. Their man's wife just proved they are a catastrophic risk. Carolyn's heart hammered. Orion Global? Crestview? Their man's wife? She felt a cold sweat prickle her hairline. It couldn't be. It was a coincidence. Their man's wife could mean anyone. She fumbled for the in-flight Wi-Fi, her hands shaking so badly she dropped her credit card. She paid the exorbitant fee and immediately opened her email. Nothing yet from Robert. That was good. He was probably asleep. It was the middle of the night in New York. She then opened a new browser tab. Her fingers flew. Orion Global. The search results were sparse. It was a ghost, a private equity firm, a family office, some reports called it. No pictures, no CEO profiles, just a list of massive silent acquisitions. They bought distressed assets, infrastructure, and entire banks, stripped them, and sold them for parts. They were known in the financial world as the Void, because whatever they touched vanished, only to reappear, unrecognizable and vastly more profitable. She scrolled. One article from a niche financial blog mentioned their acquisition strategy for the European banking sector. The deal they were working on, the Swiss credit deal, was valued at $50 billion. And the intermediary, the American bank chosen to smooth the regulatory path, was Crestview. Carolyn felt the cabin air thin. The wine in her stomach turned to acid. The man, the buyer, he's impressive. It's the intermediary. Crestview. We're cutting them out. Their man's wife. Oh God, she whispered. She looked at the mahogany door of the residence. It was no longer just a suite. It was a throne room. And she had just, very publicly, tripped the king's son. She tried to rationalize. Julian Vance. She'd never heard of him. He wasn't on the Forbes list. He wasn't a celebrity. He wasn't a tech bro. This was the true, terrifying nature of old money power, even if the money wasn't old. It was silent. He wasn't on the list because he owned the list. She realized with dawning, sickening horror what she had done. She hadn't just been rude to a fellow passenger. She had, in her fit of racist, classist rage, potentially detonated her husband's career. She had to fix it. She unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up. Sarah, the purser, was on her in a second. "Mrs. Harding, sit. Down." "No, you don't understand," Carolyn pleaded, her voice a desperate, wheezing gasp. I need to apologize." "It's too late for that, Mom. Sit down, or I will have you restrained." "Please!" Carolyn was weeping now, her mascara running. "Please, just let me talk to him. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake." "Yes, you did," Sarah said, her face granite. "Now, sit." Carolyn collapsed back into her seat, the sobs coming hard and ugly. She was a pariah. The other passengers stared, not with sympathy, but with contempt. She had been the queen of the cabin, and now she was the jester. The rest of the flight was 8 hours of pure, unadulterated hell. She was a prisoner in her pod, stewing in her own toxic mix of fear, regret, and humiliation. She was, for the first time in her privileged life, utterly and completely powerless. The jolt of the landing gear hitting the tarmac at Heathrow was a physical punctuation mark. It was the end of the sentence, the closing of a book, the fall of a gavel. Carolyn Harding felt the impact in her teeth. The last 8 hours had been a masterclass in quiet, pressurized torment. After her collapse, she had been treated not with hostility, but with a cold, terrifying indifference. She had spent much of the flight in the lavatory, staring at her own reflection in the harsh, fluorescent light. The woman who stared back was a stranger. Her $500 blonde helmet was deflated, stuck to her forehead with a film of cold sweat. Her expensive mascara had run, leaving black, spider-like trails through her foundation. She was the very picture of the hysterical woman she had always despised. She, Carolyn Harding, was a mess. When the fasten seatbelt sign pinged off, it was as loud as a gunshot in the silent cabin. She had been clutching her phone for the last hour, the screen dark, her thumbprint polished smooth from anxious rubbing. As the plane taxied past the grey, rainy sprawl of London, her phone connected to the local network. It did not just vibrate. It seized. It was a continuous, violent shudder in her hand, as if it were trying to escape. A cascade of notifications flooded the lock screen, one after another, a digital hailstorm so dense it was unreadable. She fumbled with her passcode, her fingers slick. The screen opened. It was a tapestry of pure, unadulterated ruin. At the top, a sea of red. Robert, husband, 15 missed calls. Then the text messages, each one a hammer blow. 8:05 a.m. LHR, what did you do? He knew. But how? The thought barely formed before the next text arrived. 8:06 a.m. Carolyn, pick up the phone, now. The all caps, the naked panic. This was not the man she knew. 8:10 a.m. They just locked me out of my system. My terminal is dark. My keycard isn't working. It was real, concrete, not an argument, but an execution. 8:11 a.m. The CEO just called me, crying, C-R-Y-I-N-G. He said I'm radioactive. The word crying short-circuited her brain. Men like them didn't cry. 8:15 a.m. What did you do on that plane? The accusation, the finality. She felt the wine from hours ago surge in her throat. She scrolled past the texts, her thumb slick with sweat, to her email inbox. It was an obituary for her life. From Mark Ibold, Crestview General Counsel. Subject, urgent and confidential. Action required. Carolyn, by order of an emergency board meeting, You and your husband are suspended, effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Do not speak to anyone. Do not use any company credit cards. All access is revoked. From Amex Platinum Concierge. Subject: An alert on your account. We regret to inform you that your card, ending in 8008, has been suspended due to a direct request from your primary financial institution. Please call the number on the back of your card. From Greenbrier Country Club. Subject: Emergency Membership Review. Dear Mrs. Harding, we have received a formal complaint from a fellow Platinum member regarding your conduct. The board is convening an emergency ethics hearing. Your privileges are suspended pending review. A fellow Platinum member? It could only be Arthur Finch. She was drowning, but the digital wave wasn't finished. As she stared, a new notification pushed its way to the top. It was from the Wall Street Journal. Headline: Orion Global halts 50-bay Swiss credit acquisition, citing fundamental lack of judgment at partner bank Crestview. Stock in freefall. Carolyn's heart stopped. She clicked it. Her hands were shaking so violently, she almost dropped the phone. The article loaded. It was time-stamped just 30 minutes ago. Orion Global, it read. The notoriously private buyer has pulled out of the landmark deal at the 11th hour, sending shockwaves through the European market. An unnamed source close to the deal stated that the pullout was triggered by a catastrophic failure of character and appalling personal conduct exhibited by a senior representative of Crestview, which called the entire bank's ethics and judgment into question. It continued. A spokesperson for Orion Global stated only, "We cannot, in good conscience, partner with an organization that fails to meet our standards of basic human decency." Crestview, CRST. Stock is halted, but is expected to open down at least 80%. Carolyn read the phrases again, her blood turning to ice. A catastrophic failure of character, appalling personal conduct, senior representative. They didn't mean Robert, they meant his wife. She, in her 10-second fit of racist, classist rage, had become a $50 billion liability. The scale of it was incomprehensible. She gagged, a dry, painful heave. The plane stopped at the gate with a final, gentle sigh. The thud of the jet bridge connecting was, to Carolyn, the sound of a coffin lid closing. The pilot's voice came over the PA, infuriatingly calm. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London Heathrow. We ask that all passengers remain seated for a moment. The authorities will be boarding the aircraft first. Authorities. The word was a gunshot in her brain. Arrest. He had lied. Julian Vance had lied. He was having her arrested. She saw it all in a flash. Handcuffs, a perp walk, past the economy passengers, her mug shot on the Daily Mail. The humiliation was so profound, so absolute, she almost fainted. The cabin door whooshed open. The first person on was not a bobby. It was Marcus Thorne, the airline executive, his face a grim, professional mask. He was followed by two men. They were not police. They were something far more expensive, sculpted from granite and bespoke wool. Their earpieces were discreet. Their eyes were cold, scanning the cabin with zero curiosity. They didn't look at the residents. They didn't look at Arthur Finch, who was calmly packing his briefcase, a man who clearly knew exactly what was happening. They walked directly, with silent, heavy steps, to seat 2A. Carolyn had shrunk into her seat, trying to become invisible. It was useless. Mrs. Carolyn Harding. The voice was low, neutral, and final. She could only nod, her throat too tight to speak. "We are from the Ethelredge Air Private Security Services," the first man said. "We are here to escort you from the aircraft. Please gather your belongings. You will be coming with us." Am I being arrested?" she whispered, the words catching in her dry mouth. "We are not the police," the man replied, which was not a no. "You are being detained, pending an internal investigation by the airline and its partners. Now please come with us. Quietly." Quietly. The word was a slap. She was forced to stand. Her legs were jelly. As she fumbled for her bag, she dropped her phone. It clattered to the floor, screen up, the WSJ article still glowing. The security man picked it up, glanced at the screen, and handed it back, his face impassive. And then, in a piece of timing so perfect it could only have been orchestrated, the curtains to the residence swished open. The Vance family emerged. The contrast was a physical assault. Julian was in a fresh, perfectly tailored dark suit. Aidan looked elegant and rested, as if she'd just stepped out of a spa. Little Leo was holding a new Lego set, a massive, intricate model of the London Eye, clearly a gift from the crew. He was holding his father's hand. They didn't look at Carolyn. They didn't acknowledge her presence. She was a piece of furniture, a stain on the carpet. Marcus Thorne, who had been waiting for them, transformed. His grim face lit up with a genuine, warm smile. "Mr. Vance, Mrs. Vance, welcome to London. I do hope the rest of your flight was comfortable." "It was, thank you, Marcus," Aidan said, her voice like warm honey, as if nothing had ever happened. "Mr. Vance, your car is waiting on the tarmac," Marcus said, gesturing them forward. "We've fast-tracked you through immigration, and your luggage is already in the vehicle." Carolyn was being held in the aisle by the security men, forced to step aside, to press herself against the bulkhead to let them pass. Julian Vance walked by, less than a foot away. He did not turn his head. He did not speed up. He simply proceeded, his world unaffected. As he passed, he made eye contact for one, brief, chilling second. Not with Carolyn, with Arthur Finch in 1A. He gave Finch a small, single nod. "Business," concluded. Then to Marcus, Julian said, "Thank you, Marcus. A lovely flight, as always." They were gone, down the jet bridge, to their private car, to their life. Carolyn was left standing in the aisle, flanked by security, the smell of Aidan's faint, expensive perfume still in the air. The other first-class passengers were now standing, pointedly looking away, not wanting to be associated. She had expected a fight, a screaming match, handcuffs. She got nothing. She realized with a dawning, sickening horror that settled in her bones that this was the real karma. It wasn't an arrest. It wasn't a shout. It was the silent, effortless, and absolute erasure of her entire existence. She was, to Julian Vance, not an enemy to be fought. She was a line item to be deleted. And the delete key had just been pressed. "Now, Mum," the security man's voice cut through her daze, all business. "This way." The walk from the jet bridge was a silent, cold humiliation. The two men from Ethelredge Air Private Security Services did not hold her arms, but they flanked her so closely that any deviation was impossible. They were both large, impassive, and wore immaculate dark suits. They were human walls. Passengers from economy, streaming into the terminal, looked on with casual curiosity, their faces a mixture of pity and judgment. Carolyn, who lived for the admiring glances of strangers, now only received their contempt. They did not go to the main terminal. They bypassed immigration, took a staff-only elevator, and descended into the sterile, fluorescent-lit bowels of Heathrow. The corridors were a maze of polished concrete and color-coded pipes. It was a place for baggage, not people. She was, she realized, being treated like lost luggage. She was led into a windowless, beige room. It contained a single metal table and 4 plastic chairs. The air was cold and smelled of industrial cleaner and stale coffee. The only sound was the high-pitched whine of a fluorescent light ballast. "Wait here," the first man said. He didn't look at her. "Your phone, please." I have a right to a lawyer," Carolyn stammered, the words sounding hollow even to her. "This is not a police matter, Mrs. Harding. This is a corporate security matter," the man said. "We need to process your device for any footage taken on the flight. It's part of the airline's internal investigation. Your cooperation is advised, or we can wait for the Metropolitan Police. It's your choice, but they are far less discreet." The threat hung in the air. Discreet, the last thread of her reputation. She handed over the phone. He took it, and they left, locking the door from the outside. The click of the lock was deafening. She was alone for more than an hour. It was a calculated psychological torment. With every passing minute, her terror mounted. She paced. She sat. She replayed the encounter, the WSJ headline, the look on Arthur Finch's face. She tried to rationalize. "Robert will fix this. He's a senior VP. He's important. This is all a misunderstanding. A simple apology will clear this up." But the beige walls offered no comfort, and the high-pitched whine of the light was like a drill in her skull. The door finally opened. 2 people entered. The first was a woman in a razor-sharp, navy blue suit. Her dark hair was cut into severe bangs, and her face was a mask of cold professionalism. She carried a leather-bound portfolio. The second was a man, older, with kind eyes and a grandfatherly air, which was somehow more terrifying. He carried nothing. "Mrs. Harding," the woman began, her British accent precise. "My name is Miss Davies. I am from the General Counsel's office for Ethelredge Air. This is Mr. Shaw. He is a risk management consultant representing the interests of our other clients." "Clients?" Carolyn whispered. Miss Davies ignored the question. She sat, opened her portfolio, and began to read in a flat monotone. "Mrs. Harding, due to your actions on Flight 0008, which included, but are not limited to, the deliberate physical obstruction of a minor, verbal assault on a child, and the documented use of racially discriminatory language against fellow passengers, Ethelredge Air is taking the following actions, effective immediately." She paused, taking a sip of water she had brought for herself. 1. You, your husband, Robert Harding, and any known immediate family members are hereby banned, for life, from Ethelredge Air, its parent company, and all partner airlines in the Star Alliance global network. Any attempt to book travel will result in immediate cancellation and forfeiture of funds. Carolyn's world of summering in the Alps and wintering in St. Bart's vanished. 2. Your Ethelredge Air Executive World Elite credit card is cancelled. Your accrued balance of 2.4 million air miles is forfeited. Your Platinum Concierge status is revoked. 3. We are issuing a civil fine of $50,000, payable immediately, to cover the costs of this investigation, the distress to our crew, and the reputational damage to our brand. 50,000, Carolyn gasped. That's theft. Ms. Davies looked up from her paper for the first time, her eyes like chips of ice. The fine is non-negotiable. It has already been billed to your husband's bank. Oh, and one more thing. The passengers who filmed your outburst, several of them, including Mr. Finch in 1A, volunteered their footage to us and to Mr. Vance's team. We have 3 high-definition angles of you, ma'am, putting your foot in the aisle. The evidence is conclusive. Carolyn's vision tunneled. She felt sick. That concludes the airline's business, Ms. Davies said, closing her portfolio. She stood up. I will leave you with Mr. Shaw. He has other matters to discuss. She walked out. The grandfatherly man, Mr. Shaw, remained seated, his hands folded on the table. He smiled, and it was the most terrible smile Carolyn had ever seen. Carolyn, he said, his voice soft, like a therapist. "May I call you Carolyn? I'm not here for the airline. I'm here for Mr. Vance." He sent you?" A spark of hope. Maybe he wanted the apology. "In a manner of speaking," Mr. Shaw said, chuckling, "Mr. Vance is a very efficient man. He doesn't believe in messy public spectacles. No police, no arrests, no tawdry lawsuits. He finds them uncivilized. He prefers accountability. He prefers consequences." He leaned forward. "You see, Julian isn't just a client. He is the airline's client. His personal travel budget is larger than the GDP of a small country. But his business, Orion Global, is one of the largest logistics clients in the world. He doesn't just fly on Ethelredge. He ships billions of dollars of cargo on it. He is the valued customer. You are just cargo." I didn't know," she whispered. "That, Carolyn, is the very crux of the problem. You acted without knowing. You assumed. And you assumed incorrectly, dangerously." Mr. Shaw continued, his voice still gentle. "When the incident occurred, Mr. Vance made a call. Not to the police, to his family office. He tasked his forensic accounting team with a simple question. Who is Robert Harding? A cold dread, colder than the room, settled over her. It's amazing what you can find in 2 hours when you have the right resources. They found Crestview Bank. They found the $50 billion Swiss credit deal. And they found you and Robert. Mr. Vance's team, in the course of their own due diligence on Crestview, had already noted a systemic risk, the Executive Compensation and Loan Program, a very generous program, which your husband was a primary beneficiary of. It seems Crestview liked to pay its executives in IOUs, lending them money for houses, cars, and club memberships, all held by the bank. Mr. Shaw shook his head, as if in sympathy. "It's a house of cards, Carolyn. All that lovely money. It wasn't real. It was just leverage, and Crestview, to free up its own capital, had bundled all those executive loans, Robert's included, into a single debt asset and sold it to a third-party holding company." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "About 4 hours ago, as you were somewhere over the Atlantic, Mr. Vance instructed his team to purchase that third-party holding company. It was a trivial expense. He didn't just buy your debt, Carolyn. He bought the entire portfolio. He now, personally, holds the note on your $3.2 million Greenwich home. He holds the note on the $1.2 million unsecured credit line Robert used to buy stocks. He holds the note on your custom order Maserati and your husband's Porsche. He is not your bank, Mrs. Harding. He is your owner." Carolyn stopped breathing. This was not possible. This was insane. "He is," Mr. Shaw continued, his voice clinically precise. "A very traditional man. He believes if you harm a child, you must pay. And Mr. Vance has decided that the price for tripping his son is $4.7 million. He slid a single piece of paper across the table. It wasn't a bill. It was a formal, legal demand for payment. "This is a demand note. Per the contract Robert signed, it is payable in full upon request of the new creditor. Mr. Vance is requesting. You and your husband have 30 days to liquidate your assets and pay the $4.7 million you owe him. After 30 days, foreclosure and asset seizure proceedings will begin." "We'll declare bankruptcy," Carolyn shrieked, the words clawing their way out of her throat. Mr. Shaw smiled that terrible smile again. "You can try, but Mr. Vance's legal team is formidable, and they've already filed an injunction citing fraudulent conveyance on Robert's part, tying up all his assets. You can't sell the house, you can't move the money, you can't even use your credit cards. They were all frozen as of 9:01 a.m. London time." He stood up. Mr. Vance wanted me to pass on a message. He said, "Tell her I hope she enjoys the general boarding zone." I believe that's all. Her phone was slid back onto the table. The security guards re-entered. "You're free to go, Mrs. Harding," Mr. Shaw said. "Oh, and one last thing. Your husband's things. He'll need to be out of the house by 5 p.m. today. Mr. Vance's associates are already there, changing the locks." Carolyn was half dragged, half walked back through the corridors and dumped at the arrivals curb at Heathrow. She was in a daze. The noise of the taxis, the smell of diesel, the press of the crowd. It was a sensory assault. She, a woman who owned a $5,000 handbag, couldn't afford a bottle of water. She stared at her phone. It was a brick of bad news. The missed calls from Robert, the emails from the bank, the club, the school. It was all real. She finally found the courage to call her husband. He picked up on the first ring. It wasn't a hello. It was a dry, broken sound, like a man clearing his throat after a long-buried grief. "Robert," she whimpered. "Where are you?" His voice was dull. "Dead." "Robert, they're taking everything," she cried, the hysteria finally breaking through. "They said we're broke. They said he bought us. He bought the house. We have to pay $4.7 million. There was a long, terrible silence on the line. Then, a laugh. It was a bitter, terrifying, broken sound. "He did," Robert whispered. "Oh God, Carolyn, he did. It's over. No. Robert, you fix this," she screamed into the phone, and a man walking past with a "Welcome to London" balloon gave her a wide berth. "You call the CEO, you call the board, you tell them what this animal is doing." "The CEO?" Robert's laugh turned into a sob. "The CEO. He was fired before me. The board. Carolyn, the board is being dissolved. The WSJ article. The stock didn't just fall, it was delisted. Crestview is insolvent. It's over. It's all over. But the deal. He's still buying the other bank." "Yes!" Robert roared, his voice cracking. "He's buying Swiss Credit. With a new partner. Arthur Finch's bank. They announced it an hour ago. He cut us out, and the market cheered him for it. They're calling it a master stroke of ethical diligence." He was weeping now. "They're clawing back 5 years of my bonuses. They said I was criminally negligent and a character risk. Me. The house. The cars. The club. It was all tied to that loan, Carolyn. It was all a house of cards, and you blew it all down." Robert, I'm scared," she whispered, her own tears running. "I'm at the airport. I don't have any money. How do I get home?" "Home?" he said, his voice suddenly as cold as Miss Davies's. "There is no home. I'm standing in the foyer with 2 men, the same men, I think, that you met. They're watching me pack a single bag. I'm being evicted, Carolyn. I have to be out in 1 hour. The house belongs to him now." "Evicted? Where will you go? Where will I go?" "I don't know," he said. "And what's more, I don't care. Do you understand me? I do not care. You did this. You, with your poison. Your need to be better than everyone. Your snobbery. I saw it for 20 years, and I thought it was strength. But it's just a disease. You didn't just poke a bear, Carolyn. You walked into the den of a dragon, insulted his child, and then complained that his gold wasn't shiny enough. We're not ruined. We're incinerated." The line went dead. Carolyn Harding stood on the curb at Heathrow as the world rushed past. She was an exile, an unperson. She eventually sold her 5-carat diamond wedding ring to a cash-for-gold kiosk in the terminal for $800, just enough for a one-way, last-minute economy ticket home on a budget airline. 6 months later, A woman who looked vaguely like Carolyn Harding sat in the New York Public Library. Her $500 blonde helmet was gone, replaced by stringy, mousy brown hair with dark roots. Her hands, which once had weekly manicures, were chapped. She was using a public computer, the 60-minute timer in the corner ticking down. She was filling out an online application for a $17.50 an hour data entry job. Previous employment? She stared at the box. She had typed CEO Harding Philanthropic Fund, then deleted it. She typed homemaker. Out of a dark, masochistic habit, she opened a news tab. The Financial Times. The headline, Vance Foundation Gala raises $100 million for new pediatric oncology wing. There was a picture. Julian and Aidan Vance, standing on a stage. Aidan was in a stunning, midnight blue gown, her arm linked with Julian's. They were laughing, handing a giant check to a doctor. In the background, raising a glass of champagne, was Arthur Finch. The article gushed about the Aidan Vance Wing for Pediatric Hope and the ethically driven growth of Orion Global. Carolyn stared at the photo of Aidan, at the dignity, the grace, and the silent, unassailable power she had so completely misread. Her reflection stared back at her from the dark screen, a gaunt, haunted face. The computer suddenly flashed. Your session has expired. The screen went black. The karma wasn't a lightning bolt. It was an erasure. She hadn't just been proven wrong. She had been, in every way that mattered to her, deleted. And so, Carolyn Harding learned the hardest lesson of all. When you try to build your own worth by tearing others down, you risk discovering that your foundation is made of sand. She mistook quiet dignity for weakness and silent power for absence. The Vances continued to build their world, funding hospitals and universities, while Carolyn became a ghost in her own life, a permanent resident of the economy class she so despised. The karma wasn't loud, it was silent, complete, and utterly irreversible. What did you think of Carolyn's catastrophic mistake? Do you believe the consequences fit the crime, or was the revenge too harsh? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. This is a story about what happens when blinding prejudice meets overwhelming power. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes drama and hard-hitting karma, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories, where every action has a severe and permanent consequence. Don't miss what's coming next.